Another bit of advice I can give, to be honest, is that sometimes even if you raise it and things aren't followed through properly, or it is brushed under the carpet, you do feel like you have no choice but to find something else and leave. And it's far better to leave a toxic environment than it is to stay in it and have it affect your mental health drastically like it did with me.
Hello everyone and welcome to Cybersecurity Sessions, our regular podcast exploring all things cybersecurity. I'm your host, Cyril Noel-Tagoe, Principal Security Researcher at Netacea, the world's first fully agentless bot management product. Today, we're going to be investigating mental health, bullying and neurodiversity in cybersecurity. Stress and burnout are real challenges for this industry, with increasing workloads, long hours in front of screens, a constant barrage of alerts, and an expectation to be always available. In fact, research from Deep Instinct found that 45% of cybersecurity professionals have considered quitting the industry due to stress. So how can we try and tackle this problem? Well, I'm pleased to be joined on today's episode by security awareness consultant and mental health coach, Lisa Ventura. Welcome to the show, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Cyril. It's great to be here.
Would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners, please?
Sure. So my name is Lisa Ventura. I'm the founder of Cybersecurity Unity, and we're a global organization that aims to unite the cybersecurity industry to combat the growing cyber threat. But amongst various projects that we undertake, we do a lot of work within mental health support services and awareness raising of the problem of stress and workplace bullying as well.
And I'll be interested to hear how you came about into the kind of the mental health role in particular.
So I'd always had a strong interest in a lot of different areas of mental health and so on. Over the years, I've had my own struggles with it. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, depression and anxiety, and that was from enduring a lot of bullying from within my lifetime, not just within the cybersecurity industry. And because it was an area that I was so passionate about, I really wanted to help others that I could see were struggling with their mental health in the cybersecurity industry. CISOs in particular have a challenge because they need to be sort of online 24/7. If there is a cybersecurity attack or a data breach, everything is always usually aimed at them. And they're under significant pressure to deliver 24/7, be on hand to stop attacks. And if one does happen, have it all thrown at them as well. So that was why I decided to go down that route and look at becoming a mental health coach. And I'm also a fully qualified mental health first aider as well.
Great. And I hear that you're a mindset coach as well. How does that differ from a mental health coach?
Well, that's around trying to support individuals within cyber with their mindset when things might be going a bit, tough, or they might have had a data breach, or they might be under significant pressure. So that's, all about keeping your mental health in check, but also providing that motivation, that, support, the fact that, somebody's there just to be able to lend a hand or to listen, and to keep cyber professionals focused on their goals and what they want to achieve.
And I mean, the cybersecurity industry, right? You said it yourself, and kind of the stress that CISOs are under. Do you think, compared to other industries, stress is a major problem for cybersecurity, or do you think it's across the board?
I think it's across the board. And of course, it isn't just CISOs. Cyber professionals across the board can be affected by it. Cyber in particular does have a stress and burnout problem. And as a result, it also has a retention problem with many leaving the industry because of the immense stress and pressure that they're under in their roles. And it's definitely something that needs to have a lot more awareness raised about it.
And I guess that becomes a vicious cycle, right? Because you've got the skills gap, right? But then you've also got people leaving the industry due to stress, which means that people who are still there have higher workloads, and then the stress goes up. So as individuals, how can we look out for ourselves and our colleagues from a mental health perspective?
For me, the biggest thing is check in with your colleagues and people that you work with. Just ask if they're okay, if there's anything that they need support with, or just need a listening ear for things that they might be going through, etc. The old adage of "it's good to talk" really does ring true. And for employers as well, having those well-being programs, access to talking services, counselling support services, etc., can be so important to supporting not just cybersecurity professionals, but all employees within the workplace.
And have you got any advice for, so when you say like talk to people, so kind of if you
Mm.
ask someone, is it okay? Kind of most British people will reply, yeah, I'm fine. How do you get past that kind of
Yeah.
that barrier?
I usually ask questions that are a little bit sort of more open-ended and just sort of try and inquire, how's the workload going? Or maybe not even a question, but try to just come up with some statements. And then hopefully some of those statements might ring a bit true. Ah, yes, that's what I'm going through. And that might just open up that dialogue just that little bit more efficiently.
Right, right. Yeah, that's really good way of thinking about it. Just kind of making a
Yeah.
relatable thing that they'll kind of
Mm.
then contribute to. If we look at recent times in the past few years, we've had obviously the pandemic, which has caused stresses of its own in terms of stuff like furlough and stuff like that. But another big driving cause from that has been the shift to remote work. Would you say that this has impacted how we're thinking about mental health in the workplace?
I believe it has, and I've seen a lot of people feeling a lot more isolated because of the move to work from home. I'm also a big advocate of finding the right way that works for the individual. So, some individuals absolutely thrive on being in the office 5 days a week. Some need to be remote based full time. Others might prefer that hybrid mix, if you like, of being in the office, say, a couple of days and the rest from home. So for me, it's all about empowering individuals to make those choices and that they can be supported by their employers to make those choices for what works for them. And absolutely, there has been a greater impact when we had to be at home 24/7 and not in the office because of the pandemic. That was a very difficult situation. A lot of people struggled to adjust to that. And I also found as well with the move to platforms such as Teams, Zoom, online instant messaging channels as well, that bullying and abuse kind of increased on those channels. And it's almost like people feel that they have a license to be able to just, sort of say what they want because they're at the end of a keyboard and that there's no sort of ramifications around that. And I found that that was a particular problem, or that things could be misconstrued on an online instant messaging program as opposed to being with somebody face to face or on the phone. So certainly, yes, a big challenge when the pandemic hit.
That's really interesting around
Mm,
the bullying aspect, because in my previous role, one of the things I used to do is go into schools and talk about online safety, and you'll talk about cyberbullying there, but you don't really think of it so much in the kind of professional sphere, or at
mm.
least people in general don't think of it so much there. So would you say cyberbullying is a big issue these days, especially post-pandemic?
Absolutely. I think it's certainly a problem. I've seen a huge amount, particularly on social media as well. A lot of what I call Twitter pylons, things getting out of control, everybody sort of jumping in, etc. And it can be really soul destroying, especially when it's done in a very sort of public way like that. And it's a huge problem, and it's one that I campaign really heavily on. And there are great organisations out there as well that are doing a lot of work in this area. So, of course, we have Respect and Security, which encourages organisations to take a pledge and follow a code of conduct against bullying and abuse in their organisations. But a lot more needs to be done. And Respect and Security just do some amazing work. And I'd love to see that amplified so much more and more organisations get on board with it.
You mentioned the messages on platforms such as
Mm,
Teams, and kind of one is that yes, they might be being misconstrued because you haven't got that context, but sometimes they are actually malicious. How's an
mm.
organization can you deal with something like that where it might not intentionally be malicious, but in other cases it might be?
I think that there's a lot that organisations can do if somebody does report an incident, like that. Obviously, investigate, talk to individuals concerned, and have some really strong policies in place against workplace bullying and abuse. And if you do receive a complaint of this, try not to just brush it under the carpet, but try to act on it and get some proper safeguards and things in place so that everybody feels safe in the workplace with what they do.
And are there any other ways that bullying manifests itself in the workplace that we haven't covered?
I can give you an example of something that happened to me a few years ago, in fact, and it was. I've been working remotely for some time, so this was before the pandemic hit, and
Mm,
I was on a weekly Teams call with a few others and so on, and it happened to be a Monday morning, and everybody was sort of saying about, how's your weekend? How's your weekend? Well, I just had a particularly bad weekend for family reasons, and so I wasn't really feeling that whole "Hey, how was your weekend?" vibe that
right.
was going on. So I actually stated that I didn't have a great weekend, to be honest, because I had to deal with an incident with my auntie who has dementia. But hey, it's a new week, and a new start, and so on. And then I got a phone call, not long after that from my line manager saying I should never have mentioned the fact that my auntie has dementia because it might have been quite triggering for somebody else that has that. And it was the way she said it and came across that as well. I was so shocked. I was just like,
Mm,
okay. A few hours later, we had another call. A few individuals of the team came in, and my line manager was a good 10 minutes or so late. When she finally turned up to the call, she was, "Oh, I'm so sorry I'm late for the call, but I've just had the best news. My son, who's 16, has just got his first job, and I'm a really proud mother," and so on. What she didn't realize, because I'd never disclosed it, is that I'd lost my only son to stillbirth years before that. So
mm,
that could have been potentially everything can be triggering for somebody. And I was just I had to turn my camera off because I was just I can't I just can't even process this, that I've just been pulled up for that in the morning,
yeah.
and then I have that in the afternoon, and I resigned the same day, and I didn't look back because even raising it, I just didn't think there was anything to come back from that. And there were other incidents as well. I'd been, pulled up for posting too much in the Teams chat because I was apparently distracting everybody from their work. Yet others that were posting a lot more than me had not been asked to refrain from posting so much. So I was a definite target, and I just wasn't having it. And that's another bit of advice I can give, to be honest, is that sometimes even if you raise it and things aren't followed through properly, or the individuals concerned aren't fully dealt with, or it is brushed under the carpet, you do feel like you have no choice but to find something else and leave. And it's far better to leave a toxic environment than it is to stay in it and have it affect your mental health drastically, like it did with me.
Right, you're working to live, right?
Mm,
You're not kind of living to work. So if
yeah,
the environment's not right for you, then move to one
yeah,
that is. Yeah, I'm very sorry to hear all
yeah.
that. Um, if we just stick on kind of bullying and kind of for
Mm,
just a moment and kind of the impact that has on stress and
yeah.
burnout, right? Because you've got this already very stressful environment, cybersecurity, and then you've got this bullying as well. Do you think in cybersecurity especially there's kind of more of a bullying problem than other industries, or is it just there's the same bullying problem and this is just exacerbating the already high stress problem we have in cybersecurity?
I can't really speak for a lot of other industries, but I do see that it's absolutely prevalent in
Mm,
cybersecurity, both on social media and in the workplace and so on. And it really, really is just absolutely soul destroying. And I've been at a few different organizations where I've had this happen to me. I've also seen the most awful abuse and Twitter pylons, as they're known, which I've not been subjected to myself online, but I've seen other people that have, and I've always tried to reach out to those individuals to make sure there's okay. A lot of people will leave social media and so on as a result, and that's another thing that I find is having those social media breaks as well can really sort of help. And what I would urge anyone to say is, if you're hovering on that keyboard, say something, just stop for just 30 seconds or so and just think, how would I feel if what I'm about to say I received? And just really just stop for that moment and just try to put yourself in the shoes of the other person that you're about to send that message to. Because again, sometimes it might be coming from a place you might be having a bad day, or you might have had a particularly bad, experience or something, and that spills out into what you're trying to post. Just stop for a minute and have a think, because we all do need to be kind to each other.
Yeah, definitely. And I think social media, people find this voice that they almost see there's no one on the other side of the screen, and any thought that comes into their head that they're just kind of
Mm,
spitting that out, but there's not really a consideration of others. I know
yeah.
in our work a lot of the time when we're looking at some of these forums where we're tracking threat actors, and especially when they are talking about other security researchers, they can be very intense in kind of how they talk about us. But at
Mm,
least for me personally, I know that's limited to that, and I can avoid that. But with other people, it's kind of constant wherever you go online, and it's almost following you
mm,
around. So
absolutely.
let's talk about some one of the more positive sides
Mm,
of social media. So
yeah,
I guess with mental health, and awareness is rising on social media, right? You kind of see more posts, a lot of companies putting posts out, a lot of people
yeah.
more willing to share their stories and educate the rest of the world. How would you find kind of the positive side of social media?
So I have to say that for me, that in the last 2 years, particularly since the pandemic, it's been an absolute lifeline. I've actually developed a lot of really good, positive friendships, from social media, people that I've not met in person yet, but I've been speaking to, for quite some time. And that side of it for me is really, really positive. And just knowing that there's always somebody to be able to reach out to talk to if I need it is also been a godsend as well. So, social media isn't all bad. I've built up a real community. I have some amazing friends. And it's been that lifeline, for me, particularly over the last couple of years or so. So it really isn't all bad.
And what about its power to kind of
Mm,
obviously talking about stuff like mental health and just the power of people to kind of share their story and draw other
mm,
people in? Are there any particularly good like groups that you found, or kind of forums where people sharing this stuff can help
yeah.
people who are going through issues?
Absolutely. So I'm a member of It's Time to Thrive, which is where I did my mental health first aid training with, and I've known a lot of the organisers and so on, and the people involved in that. And there are also some really sort of nice groups, communities on Twitter and Twitter Spaces as well that I get involved in. And also, actually on LinkedIn, there are a couple of really good mental health support groups as well. So there are resources and groups and so on out there for you to be able to join and link up with and speak to other people and just share those experiences, so you know that you're not alone and that other
Mm.
people are going through it too. And that was really powerful for me, especially with my complex PTSD diagnosis that I had. Talking to others that have also gone through it as well, or experience it, can be really helpful.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that I'm at least seeing a lot more about on social media is around neurodiversity as well. I feel
Mm.
like in the last few years there's been an increased focus on that, which is really great. But for those who aren't sure of what neurodiversity actually means, could you kind of
Mm.
explain that, please?
Yeah, so neurodiversity is conditional things that are just sort of different from what is considered neurotypical. So, for example, that's things like autism or ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, CD disorder, any of those things. And I myself was diagnosed as autistic in 2018. So I have a lot of experience with the condition and trying to manage it and so on. The phrase that I use a lot is that I'm different, I'm not difficult. Whereas a lot of people that are autistic may be perceived as being a bit difficult because we might need, workplace adjustments or changes or things like that. It's no, I'm different. I'm not difficult, and some of those changes will enable me to work and empower me to deliver my best work and be as productive as possible.
And in particular, with regards to the cybersecurity industry,
Mm.
do you feel that more neurodiverse people are being drawn to the industry, or do you think there could be more done to draw neurodiverse people to the industry?
I think there could be a lot more done, because studies have shown that those of the neurodiverse are very suited to careers within the cybersecurity industry, particularly those that have that laser beam focus on things like, coding and pen testing and so on, that can be a really, really good career choice for those that are neurodiverse. And I think that a lot more needs to be done to raise awareness of this. There is some great work being done at the moment. For example, where I live, there is a community neurodiverse SOC company that actually trains individuals who are neurodiverse into careers in cyber. And again, I think a lot more awareness is being raised of this, and that can only be a really good thing for the industry to help fill the cyber skills gap as well.
Yeah, and I think so. Again, in my previous role, I was doing some. I was speaking with some people from the police, and kind of they've got their kind of the four pillars for dealing with cybercrime, and one of them is actually trying to prevent people from actually going into cybercrime and try and repurpose those skills. And they found with especially the younger offenders, a lot of them may be neurodiverse and they weren't finding stimulation in what they were doing, and they were moving towards cybercrime because that was the avenue that was available for them. But instead, kind of having a program to draw them into the industry, reduces the amount of people doing the crime and
Yeah.
helps the defenders. So, are there any programs you know about at that young level?
Not that I've come across personally at the moment, but I know there's a lot of good work going on out there. And IASME, close to where I live at the moment, they do a lot of work to support individuals in neurodiverse into careers in cyber. So they're a good organisation to link up with. Again, it's Time to Thrive, who I did my mental health first aid training with. They do a lot of programs for those that are neurodiverse. So there are some great things that are out there.
And for yourself, what were the kind of the challenges that you faced, kind of building your own career as someone who's neurodiverse?
Um, I would say the biggest thing for me is through my diagnosis, I learned that I did not thrive or cope well in an office environment. So I was brought up that you go to school, you go to college, you go to uni, whatever it is you do. When you finish that, you then go out to work, and that's just what you do. 5 days a week, you get up, you go to that office, and that's the way that life is. And so that's how I sort of started off. I was in the office for many years, but I really, really struggled with it, and by the time I would get to Friday, I would be absolutely exhausted to the point that the weekends would just be taken up with not enjoying myself or catching up with friends. It would be, I'm just completely exhausted and I need to just sleep or rest. It was literally like that. And I really, really struggled with that. And then by the time I'd got my energy levels back up, it's Monday and I'm back into that environment again. When I was diagnosed and I made the move to work from home, which was before the pandemic, that's when I realized just how detrimental an office environment was for me. And that was very much because of the sensory overload aspect. So the noise, the lights, the general chatter, being interrupted if I was in the middle of something. Even if I tried to put headphones on, even noise cancelling didn't do a lot to drown out some of the sounds or the lights or things like that, which I really struggled with. Once I started to work from home, my productivity just went so much more through the roof. And that's when funnily enough, that's when my career really did start to take off. And
Mm.
I could still have that downtime, but then still have that time at the weekends to do things that I really enjoyed rather than having to recover from the previous week. And then we start all over again 2 days later.
Right. And then that recovery as
Yeah.
well then helps you not build up that kind of that
Yeah,
stress, which again helps with the burnout.
exactly.
Yeah. So, kind of, we've talked about the importance of getting more new diverse people into cybersecurity, but from a cybersecurity team's point of view, are there any key changes that they could be making to help attract and support neurodiverse employees? That obviously not trying to generalize because everyone's situation will be different, right? But
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the biggest one for me is, like I said earlier, giving them that empowerment to do their best work, whether that's from home, whether that's in a hybrid environment, or whether that's in the office.
mm,
So, as you said, every person that's neurodiverse will be different in what their needs are. And having that empowerment, so they're insisting on, you have to be in the office this many days or so. I appreciate there might be some, jobs or instances where that's not possible, but really, empowering people to be able to do their best work in whatever way works for them would be number one for me. And if neurodiverse people do have to go into an office, perhaps look at providing some quiet environments or a safe space or a quiet space or somewhere that they can, go to decompress for a little while if they need to. If they're needed on a lot of Teams calls or Zoom calls, for example, empowering them to be able to have some regular breaks in between those calls.
Mm.
For me, that's one of the challenges of working for, or rather with the pandemic, when all the calls suddenly converged into being online. I suddenly found myself on, online call after call after call with no break in between.
Yeah.
And that's when that exhaustion started to creep in again, but I was able to recognize it and then start putting in some breaks and really making sure that, okay, I know I've got a couple of online calls in the morning, then I need just a short half an hour break to get away, get some fresh air, just rebuild, come back and do some more. So putting those regular breaks in can be really important as well.
Yeah. And anything around the recruitment process? Because
Mm.
actually getting the job might be difficult as well, right? Are there any accommodations there that works particularly well for you or might work for others?
Yeah, certainly by reviewing things like your job descriptions and job ads, and using a lot of different inclusive language, etc., can be really beneficial. And also, again, empowering the interviewees to be able to undertake an interview, structure that works for them. Some people might be really, really stressed out at the thought of having to do some tests or things in a timed environment. I, for example, always struggled with exams because that thing of having 2 hours of getting answers down in that space of time was something that I really, really struggled with. I did them, I passed them, but it was not an easy process or easy thing for me to do. So again, just reviewing the interview process, maybe not as well having so many interviews and so on as well, and making the stages a bit better. So there's not such multiple hoops or calls or interviews to have to go through.
Yeah, yeah, that's all. Yeah, really good advice to
Mm,
organizations, and I think kind of just having that kind of view, just look at
mm,
each stage of the
yeah,
process from the actual advert through that interview process, and then actually once even the onboarding, right? How do you make them feel part of
absolutely.
the team, and then
Yeah.
um, great. Well, I think we're just about there on time, so thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us.
Thank you.
Shared some really great advice, covered some really important, sometimes difficult to talk about
Mm,
topics. So I really appreciate your candor, and I know you shared some quite personal stuff as well. So I really appreciate you sharing that with our listeners. Is there anything you kind of things you're doing that you want to share with our listeners before we let you go?
Cybersecurity Unit is going to be doing a lot of work in this area and a lot of different projects around stress and burnout in the workplace, and also to encourage more neurodiverse people into cybersecurity. So have a look out on our website. It's www.csu.org.uk. And if you'd like to get in touch with me at all, my email is lisa@csu.org.uk, and I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. So please feel free to get in touch.
Great, thank you again, Lisa.
Thank you.
And thank you to all our listeners for tuning into this episode of Cybersecurity Sessions. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe and like or leave a review on your podcast platform of choice. We'd love to get your feedback. You can also get in touch with us via our Twitter, that's @CybersecPod, or by email to podcast@netasia.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you again next month.